this is like the first real meeting about a specific chapter. My intention is to go through chapter by chapter. We don't have to cover every single chapter, but it's nice to have something to talk about, and then we can go off topic if we want. And so the first chapter that we're really covering, like last week we covered chapters 1 through 7, the recordings on the Circle forum if you want to catch up on that. But this week we're covering Learn in Public, the Old Faithful. And I mean, it's kind of like the most like well-known one, and I felt like I had to start the book there. Does anyone have like thoughts or questions, or do you want me to just sort of recap the thesis? This is very open-ended, by the way. So I'm gonna do my crickets.
Yeah, go ahead and recap it.
I was gonna say, if you could probably recap it, people can ask questions afterwards.
Okay, sure. And you can see how like I make a lot of use of structure. So I always like to give theoretical underpinnings, like the difference between learning in private and learning in public. We tend to have been trained our entire life to learn in private. And I think part of this is something that I felt because I'm a career changer myself. And I came from an industry that was extremely private, which being the finance industry. And seeing how one progress in their career there, and then seeing how one progresses in tech, I realized that like this is just a cheat code, and the sooner you realize it, the sooner you can take advantage of it and hopefully grow in your career. And fundamentally, because tech is a more open industry that enables it. Like it's not like for sure you can do this in other industries, but in tech in particular, we are, for whatever reason, particularly open. And I think partially this is because like to some extent everything is zero sum, but tech is so quickly growing that it looks like positive sum. So the more we share, the more we learn, and so on and so forth. And particularly, like I was stuck in a company where I wasn't learning much from my bosses. I wasn't learning much from the company projects that were given to me. And I think that's how like the career dice kind of rolls out for a lot of people. You hope that you just get the right mentors, you get the right projects, and like you hope you move up in the world, or if not, you sort of have to wait 2 to 3 years to find the next opportunity, and hopefully that happens again. Whereas learning public like gives you mentors that you choose, and not only that, it sort of gives you mentors that are drawn to you by the same interests. So I really like that philosophy that you're like kind of friends are the family that you choose. In the same way, sort of your public mentors and collaborators out there are kind of like the mentors that you choose as well. So part of this philosophy was definitely influenced by Scott Hanselman. So this is a very influential blog post, which I highly recommend, which is called the Dark Matter Developers. And once you see it, you kind of like see it everywhere, and there's nothing wrong with being dark matter. I think that I always, every time I bring up this blog post and this topic, I worry that I make people feel bad because they don't have the time to do all this stuff. They have got families, they got other stuff going on in their lives, and I'm a bit worried that like castigating them as dark matter means it's automatically bad. It's not. I think all we're just saying is like you could do more to make yourself more easy to find and easy to connect with, and it's not that hard because so many people don't do it. So that's kind of what the sort of positive spin on this is.
And I just want to throw in there that I didn't take it negatively.
Okay.
I see it more in a positive light of like going through this puts you in the 1% of people who actually do this. Like that makes you stand out.
Exactly.
I didn't
exactly.
see it as negative toward the other 99.
Yeah. Totally. There's an equivalent rule. So there's so much content here that I had to put in an appendix. This is, I think, the only chapter with an appendix. So this is called the 1% rule. I think if I just click this, it just works. Which is why I love, like, this has to be a PDF. Like I have to put all the links, but version 2 of this book. I'll have to rewrite to paper because everyone wants paper. But it's also called the 1% rule. And I experienced this actually as a moderator for the React subreddit, where we had millions of page views a month, but only like in the tens of thousands of comments. And just like, it's really shocking how like people's perception of a community will be shaped by the people who actually comment, because there's so many lurkers out there who never say anything at all whatsoever, that like just saying anything like puts you out there already. And that may be good or bad, but it's up to you to sort of make it a positive contribution to the community. So I really like this sort of 1% rule, because like it's an explanation of why it works. I always like to start with why. Okay, I feel like I've sort of gone on a little bit there. I want to make the connection to careers, right? Like again, like every time, like, and I do a lot of interviewing myself. I've done interviews, and you know, and I think that another thing that happens to you when you interview is that you start from zero every time. Like you don't start from zero in the sense of your accomplishments, because obviously that's what your resume is for. But it's almost like this like very imperfect like serialization deserialization algorithm. Like if I show you a resume, like you have to guess, like, is this, how much of this is fake, how much of this is like trumped up expertise, how much of this is the person being too humble, and actually it's a bigger deal than they're making it out to be, but they're just being too humble. And you have to tease it out for them, and you know, half of the people don't make it past the resume screen and all that. And then you have to sort of build a relationship with the interviewer from the beginning, which is the norm. I would say that Learning Public isn't a guaranteed formula for this, but every single time that someone has seen your work before they even knew of you, before they even came to you in an interview context, they're predisposed to hire you already. And I had this in I think like my you know, my past 3 jobs. Particularly, I think my most favorite example is my interview at Amazon, where like they don't have to know you ahead of time. They all they have to be able to do is be able to Google you and to see that you have stuff out there for them to find. So there was I did interview at Amazon, and there was one very memorable interview where I came in. The guy had never heard of me before, but he sat down and he was on my blog, he was on my site, and he was like, "This is just a formality. I've seen your work." And like that's just such a different way to interview, because you're not being judged on that 30 to 45 minute segment where you can just say, like, I don't know, you hope to say the right sequence of words to convince them to work with you. You just show them your work, and that's it. Like, I mean, you know, and particularly if there's anything that's sort of that there's extra social proof on top of it, like, you know, it's been featured at a conference, or it's been featured on some magazine or industry site that has some kind of editorial bar. That is just really impressive in and of itself. So basically, I guess part of the Learning Public idea is that you should not start from zero as much as possible. Chad, you had a question.
Yeah. So you know, it's interesting you kind of bring up your interview at Amazon, and it was like I've seen your work. A lot of people have been kind of doing the thing where they can kind of contribute to the software engineering community, you know, like talking about like even what you're doing right now, you know, with, you know, this is how you get better as an engineer. How much of that is kind of go?
Hopefully it can continue. I'm sorry, Chad. Can we try again?
Oh, yeah. So I was saying that a lot of people have been supporting the software engineering community, even with like yourself with these sessions. They've been supporting, you know, like, but not necessarily directly, technically, like they haven't produced code or they haven't produced like an article. How, like, in terms of like your, what is it, the way you described your experience at Amazon, where there's like, oh, I've seen your work. Does does that translate as well? Is like, oh, I've seen your contribution to the community, even though they haven't necessarily seen your code or your technical expertise.
It could be a number of ways. Like, you could be answering Stack Overflow questions, and getting solid results on solid answers on that platform. It could be being really active in whatever the local tech conference or meetup scene that you have. So for example, I actually met a guy recently who was the co-organizer of PyTexas, which is one of the better regarded Python conferences in the US. And I was like, okay, like you may not be like the most advanced Python person in the world, but you're decently connected enough and you're well organized enough that you're leading at the major Python conference. Like, that's something. And yeah, I mean, that person has never really published some crazy like influential Python blog post or anything like that. But like, it's definitely contributing to the community, and that's valuable for some parts of the job. But obviously, like, it's not the whole job. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, basically, there are many ways to do this, and it doesn't have to be through writing if that's something you're concerned about.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else? I just keep going. Okay. So let's see.
Add something.
Yeah.
I actually have experience like both engineering. Well, I've had 2 software engineering roles so far, and all of them were through my like contributions, through blog posts, to technical blog posts, and I actually reached out. Like, I never even had to apply. They reached out to me. They're like, I saw your blog post, and to add to chats.
Wow.
That's a question. One of them was very like my first role. We're like, oh, we've seen your work, we've seen your blog posts. Like, also a formality. It was like a very mission-driven company. That's one of my most recent one. They also like were like, oh, like I think it does help. I don't know if that's what you were asking. Like, it doesn't have to be super technical, but it does help kind of to write about, maybe like for me, I wrote about my journey into tech, and there was a lot of resources of how I got into tech and how did I get into open source and all that stuff. And I think it does help, like, oh, well, that this like very mission-driven company reached out to me because they saw me that I'm also kind of like very mission-driven. So it wasn't, that sense wasn't super technical, like, oh, you saw your like tech code, which they probably did too, but it did help a lot. And yeah, because I did get laid off after my first engineering role, because it was a super small startup. They laid off everybody, which is fine, but I didn't even have to I didn't have to apply. I literally got all of these interviews just from people reaching out to me because of my contributions. So I think it really does benefit a lot of people, and ourselves too.
Yeah, I love that example.
Yeah, I have an example too.
Okay.
Like, of actually benefiting from someone else learning in public. So there's a guy on Twitter who was like a VP of engineering at like Walmart, and he was doing I think he did like a Gumroad course on like things that he wished he had learned right as he was starting and increasing his career. Yeah. And I took his Gumroad course, and one of the things that really stood out to me was setting up 1-on-ones with your direct manager or founders. And I kid you not, the single most important thing I've ever done for my career. The second time I met with the CEO of the company that I'm now starting full-time with on Monday, he's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know you did all this stuff. We have to bring you on full-time. So I think because this guy on Twitter was learning in public and then posted his first Gumroad course, like that benefited my career, like, massively. So I think like you can benefit yourself from learning in public, but then also from other people learning in public too. So I just kind of wanted to share that. That was something that I found was really cool.
That's a great example. Congrats. Good job. Yeah. Wow. I think just remember to pass that on. This is such a rare opportunity that you've converted and you created for yourself, to be honest. And I think that's a really good skill. What did he have any specific advice about the one-on-ones? Because like that tends to be like, so you got the meeting, like what are you going to talk about during that meeting?
Sure. He didn't give me any specific advice. I actually reached out to him afterwards, and I was like, man, like, you're not gonna believe this. And then he was open. You know, that's another thing too. Once you invest in someone else's product, it gives you
Yeah.
like an opportunity to actually talk to them, which is cool. So he answered some of my questions about my one-on-ones. Now that I'm stepping more into like a leadership, like a technical lead kind of role, he did give me some advice too about like how to do one-on-ones with people that I'm leading and stuff like that. But I guess one of the biggest things that I've learned was like understanding the company. So now that I'm meeting regularly with the CEO, you know, he's like teaching me about business, about finances, about VCs, fundraising, hiring people, stuff like that. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen that a lot of companies are really lacking is really good communicators in tech. And so once the CEO realized that I could talk and explain things in an easy to understand format, he's like, oh, I have to hire you now. And so I just really want to encourage people that, you know, like having the soft skills can go a long ways along with the hard skills too. And then being able to communicate that in an effective way with business people makes a huge difference. So yeah, that's kind of what came out of the one-on-ones. And yeah, I mean, it's great. Like I always look forward to my one-on-ones.
That's awesome. I think also just means that you're in a company that, you know, has a very supportive and open culture that syncs well with your personality, and so it sounds like a good fit. Not everyone has to do that, you know. I think again, I try not to make it a mandatory thing that everyone has to speak, everyone has to. But I think communication, independent of like whether or not you're a good public speaker, communication itself is a good skill to practice that you can't avoid. Like if you want to grow in your career, if you want to have influence in the company, and if you want to manage people eventually, that is part of the job. And I don't care how you do it, you got to do it somehow. And I think partially, like I kind of treat learning in public as practice for when you need it. So it's almost like, it's like, oh, I don't know, like, you know, I'm afraid to put myself out there when I like upload like a YouTube video or something, or like put up a post, like I get like 3 likes and, you know, 2 viewers or whatever. It's fine, because like this is your time to suck, you know, and because like when you're called on to do it at work, that's when you really need like the years of practice beforehand. And so I almost don't care that like you know, sometimes like when you do this as practice, it doesn't necessarily have the reach that you want, because hopefully if you're growing at all, the reach that you want is going to happen in the future. Like it's gonna you're gonna have real impact in the future, and this is all a dry run. So anyway, well, thanks for sharing that, Thomas. That was a really good experience. And yeah, hey Omar.
So Omar, how are you?
Hey, very good.
Just sometimes I feel like, you know, creating content or putting content out there, because so much of, you know, the hype, so many people, like especially in the front end
oh god
area, everyone sort of like writes or talks about the same things. So just to like not to take your time sucking in the beginning, how do you choose or
how do you get past that?
How do you choose or pick things that actually like
are impactful?
Make impact? Yeah.
I love this desire, because you're saying like, I'm not just going to copy the playbook of other people and just do more of the same. You actually want to do something different. So I think this is really good. My top recommendation is top of mind right now because it's the next chapter. It's clone open source apps. And it may or may not be useful for you directly, but you'll find something interesting faster than you would if you try to copy what other people were doing in terms of content creation. So for example, some of the most interesting, so this guy, Puru VJ, this guy's projects are fascinating, right? Like, so what he does is he clones the Windows UI. Oh, this okay. Well, this one's him cloning the iOS app, iOS web app. So here he is. This is just like a really nice sort of interaction that you see every day, you know, on the web. And I think this works better on mobile than anything else. But he implemented this like sort of slide and blur effect, and that already got like a fair amount of like influence. And then he was able to sort of share some learnings from that exercise. He's got others though. I think his biggest one is the Mac OS website, where this is him simulating how the Mac works, and then being able to emulate all of this on the web in Svelte, and then being able to like just emulate all of this work. Like this is a non-trivial project where like you're not having to come out with the design, you don't have to come up with the UI interactions, you're just cloning stuff. And because like obviously the Mac is not open source itself, but now that this project exists, you can try to do the same thing and try to figure out like the difference between your implementation and theirs, and learn something faster than you would if you were trying to come up with something from whole cloth. Because you don't have to come up with the design, you don't have to come up with a lot of the decision factors are taken away for you. So I really like this as one idea. I'm not saying like this is the only way to do it, but coming up with interesting projects like this is really helpful. Even in the Discord the other day, there was someone who did like a compiler project. Does anyone remember that? Like sometime this week. Where was the guy? Does anyone remember what I'm talking about? This is on the Discord. Let's see. I don't know where it is. Okay, there you go. All right. So I think this is Nicholas. Nicholas is in the Singapore time zone, which is the one time zone that doesn't meet in this meetup because it is at night. But so Nicholas was very interested in OOP and a single responsibility principle. But he went back in time. So that's another way to do it, right? Like to say like, there's a lot of recency bias in social media where you're talking about like the same things that everyone else talks about because that is the current method of conversation. But if you take something that's sort of old and you combine it and you bring it up to something new, that can be also a nice way to sort of break the norm or break the mold of what's existing today. And I was able, like, this doesn't happen that often, and it didn't go that far, but at least it generated some really nice conversation on Hacker News. And like, that's a start, you know. Someone else did, where's the Nanda guy? Yeah, Nanda did this, creating a Babel from scratch, right? Again, this is cloning an open source project. Babel is open source, and he's like, okay, let's build a tokenizer. This one is way too like high effort for most people because he's got illustrations, he's got interactive code examples, and you know, like there's all interactive and stuff through here. So there's a lot of custom code to this blog post. But what he's trying to teach is something that's timeless. That is something that like this is just a thing that everybody uses, and you don't understand how it works, right? Let's break it down, right? And that obviously easily generates a bunch of interest as well. So the way I look it up is like this. I have this little Hacker News search tool. You just pop it in right there, and you should be able to see it. That I think it did decently well. Oh, it did not do well here, but I think it did well on Twitter. So let's just gonna put it there. You can see how all these little tricks. I do it for research, really, to be honest. So I think if I do this here, is this the Babel post? Yeah, it did well. It got some good readers because it had illustrations and all that. Yeah, I thought it was, and then I was able to tag in people who are interested in that. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here, apart from once you see more examples of how to break out of the mentality of doing the same thing that everyone else does, there's so many things that people aren't exploring because they're hard or they're non-trivial. But that's where you're going, right? You're going for the non-trivial. Omar, I don't know if that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right, Chad, you had one more question.
Yeah, it's not directly related to what you were talking about before, but
Mhm.
so like the idea of, okay, you're going to learn in public, right? How exactly, like, how do you do that? Because
Oh yeah.
when, if, like, in the sense of, so generally when I want to kind of, if I want to do something in public, I would engage with Twitter, right?
Mhm,
That's
mhm,
like the first thing that kind of comes to my mind.
mhm.
But what I've been kind of learning, and I don't know why I did, it's just what I've been kind of learning is that Twitter, in essence, is not very persistent.
Yeah.
Like, it obviously, it's always, the information is always there, but its ability to be searched is significantly lower, right? And so I guess I just wanted to, you know, that's something I don't know if I was talking to you recently or something else, but or somebody else, but just kind of the idea of writing. I guess I just wanted to ask, like, how, where do you like put these things,
Yeah.
where do you
Yeah.
say that you're learning in public?
So I think it's a very relevant question, because it's true that uh, a lot of the content that you put out is going to just go away like immediately. I think there's a concept of a half-life. This half-life is very short. Other people estimate like 4 hours of a half-life. Let's see if I can get that graphic here. There's a graphic that someone has done, but essentially, like, you want to put your content on something that's recent, and then something that's longer half-life. Okay, let's something like this, right? Like, let's say a half-life of a YouTube video is 6 days. Half-life of a Twitter post is like 21 minutes. May or may not be true, but like it's in that order of magnitude that different mediums have different half-lives based on their algorithm. But ultimately, you want to be able to easily find your relevant content, because you're going to be the primary user of that. You're going to use that to self-reference, to send to other people, to explain your long-form views on whatever. So you should put it on your personal site, or your hash node, or Medium, or Dev2, whatever you use to collect all your insights. I personally use Obsidian. Actually, I came across it based on a discussion inside of the Discord where some people were using Obsidian. George, were you the one who turned me on to Obsidian? I'm not sure. Anyway, so everything goes in here, and these are just like my raw notes, not really meant for anyone else to read. But I think once you turn things into something that is consumable by others, you might want to split it out. So for example, one of the examples that I kind of always go back into is, all right, I wanted to learn React and TypeScript. So I wrote my own cheat sheet. And if you kind of go back in time to the very earliest days, it was just one README that just had a bunch of copy and paste stuff that I use all the time. But because I used it all the time, other people were likely to use it all the time, and then it just started to grow a lot from there. Having just like easy copy and paste references for a lot of very commonly used things, I think it's something that's super valuable. You can also you can also think about it in terms of like the TILs. Who does the TILs very well? Oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the person that does TILs. Okay, Lee Byron TIL. So Lee Byron was on the original React core team, invented GraphQL, and now it's like some VP of Eng at Robinhood. He's also like sort of doing it in a similar like today I learned fashion, in a way that like it's just very, very focused on a particular topic. Like, let's say I use this Git alias thing all the time, and let's just explain it a little bit, and that's it, right? I think this is a very nice short form format for tricks and tips and tricks, essentially. But if you need something conceptual there's a little bit more structured, then maybe you can do a cheat sheet with a bit more structure as to like, all right, here's the basics, here's how you get started, here's recommendations, basically writing your own docs. And once you've written your own docs, you actually kind of don't need it anymore because you wrote all of it. But just the exercise of going through all of it makes it so solidified in your mind. It's useful for other people, and they can come along and contribute to it all the time. So in the process of maintaining this project, I've been taught TypeScript and React by so many people. 300 PRs from random people, mostly updating like typos and adding resources, but sometimes they're add fairly significant stuff, and I'll learn about it and I'll discuss it with them. So there's just many ways to do it to make it more lasting than tweets, Chad, if that helps. Like this is Josh Brenshaw. This is what I wanted to show you. Like he categorizes them in folders. So like if you want to learn random stuff about shell scripts, he's got he's got two, but like very, very concise and nice. And people really like that. Look at, there's 10,000 stars on this thing. And every now and then, like people would just post the entire things of like what he's TIL'd. And it's useful immediately because he's categorized it in terms of like topics that might be useful for some people. Like he's got some stuff about TMUX. He's got a lot of stuff about TMUX. And these are just like nice little bite-sized tips that he can use on his site. I don't know. I think basically like get it off of Twitter eventually if you think it's going to be long-term useful. But don't worry too much because it's always going to be there, hopefully, as part of Twitter. And yeah, so the real like, okay, here's the big brain version of this. Okay, you're like, I also want to say y'all not ready, but but here's the big brain version of this, which is that every piece of knowledge that you come across, everything that you learn, everything that you wish that you feel that you should wish you knew, you should commit both in a particle and a wave. Like a particle, wave meaning like an ongoing continuous learning format, which is like Twitter, and a particle, which is like a structured stored format, which is like a wiki or like my Obsidian structured thing here. And if you do that two-phase commit, you not only keep people invested in your ongoing learning, but then also you make it easy for yourself to look it up in future as well. And that's ultimately the only thing. Like right now, if I ever like I don't run a company today, but if I ever need like managing resources, I'm building up my own list of resources. I actually have more than this, but I haven't ported it over from Notion yet because I'm in the process of moving over from Notion to Obsidian. But like, you're just accumulating these resources. And then when it comes time to use them, you can sort of go over these again and then recompile them into a view of the world that you have. I just think it's like a realistic, like this is not ideal, right? Like this is ugly as hell. Like I'm not proud to show it off, but I think it's realistic because you come across ideas 24/7. Like it's just like the internet just barrages you of ideas and content all the time. And you're not ready to consume them. You're not ready to structure them yet. But you're just awake enough to browse them and go like, all right, I get the vague idea of this. Let me store it in some place I can retrieve it in the future. That's the fundamental, like, you need to disconnect the sort of serendipity from your actual usage of the thing. And I think that this is the only way to stay sane. Sorry, that was a big monologue. There's one follow-up question before I come to you, other Chad. Sam says, did you advertise the React cheat sheet or did people just find it? Yes, I did. But it was actually kind of small in the beginning. So I actually, I think, I'll just show you. I'm logged into this Felt Society account here, but let me just, the way I search myself is gonna kind of go here and then I think it's here. And then let's say cheat sheet. I think if I go back here, so does this work? Okay, yeah. So this is the original tweet where I announced it, and this is keep in mind this was like so this is 600 likes, but like this was basically sticky to that cheat sheet for 2 years. So I would say like the original impact was maybe like 100 people. These people who are influential in TypeScript definitely helped me spread it at the time. But I think it was more the process of just working on it nonstop for 2 years helped to grow it to what it is today. It wasn't any like one particular huge jump that made it popular. It was just working on it and then sharing updates about it. So I think over time, if you can see that, let's just say it's hard because I changed the URL halfway through. So I don't know. Like people just share it. Like here it is over the years. This is 2020. There's stuff in 2022, 2021. I think if you go further back in 2019, you'll in 2018 you'll get some as well. I don't know. Just work on the same thing over multiple years. You'll eventually end up to becoming one of the longest running high quality resources out there. So that's the only thing that matters really. Hope that helps, Sam. I'm not really sure how to advise you to do that, but I think anything you're interested in, like it's worth just writing your own docs, even if nobody reads it, because then you'll have internalized all of it. Okay. Other Chad. Hey.
Oh, yeah. So
Hey.
I'm interested in trying to get into this, but the problem that I find is that I'm probably learning way too much different things, and I do a completely separate line of work currently. So I'm trying to get in to some other jobs. One's either in Java or another one's I've got a couple of Node.js interviews coming up. But then I've also got almost 4 years of working in Oracle. So if I'm to start trying to do this learning in public thing, should I be doing on the stuff I'm already working on, or should I be working towards the stuff I want to do, or both?
Stuff that you want to do. Focus on stuff that you want to do.
All right, perfect.
By working on these things and posting it out there, you're going to attract people who are interested in the same things, right? And those opportunities will come your way as a result.
All right.
So like, don't bother. Like, yeah, I mean, stuff that you're already an expert in, fine. Just I think it's always useful to share that experience and to internalize the lessons that you've learned. But ultimately, like anything that you put out is just gonna like be a vote in that direction of like this is what I want to do going forward, right? Like, and people are just gonna take that as a signal that like Chad is about this topic. And so if you want to sort of pivot your audience or just like people's interest or impression of what you're interested in, then you're going to have to give them that clear signal of like, yeah, this is where I really want to go. And that is just accomplished by moving the percentage of what you do to that field that you ultimately want to end up in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad Stewart, you had a question? Or not?
So it's fun. It's kind of funny you mentioned. So you'd said, this is what this is, a vote in what Chad wants to do. And I was just like, oh, you said something. Either way, I do. So I'm kind of like, I guess, I'm trying to be a little bit more technical in kind of how I present myself, but I already kind of have like a public image of being the person who helps people get hired in tech. And that's kind of the reason why I asked my earlier question. Can that kind of be kind of conflicting with the learning in public kind of thing?
Yeah, it does a little bit, because currently your brand is that you are an expert. You help people get hired in tech, and if that's the image that you want to project, being vulnerable does hurt you in that sense, because it shows that you have a lot to learn. And like this, I don't want to, like, obviously it's a positive that you're showing this, that you're vulnerable, and obviously nobody knows everything, and obviously you have room to grow, and like simply acknowledging that isn't like a strict negative, but like it mixes up your message is what I'm trying to say. Like, are you trying to tell me like, like when you have multiple things going on, it's hard to figure out like what you're about. It just is, right? Like you're just confusing your message a little bit. I think that that's fine. So I don't mind doing that. Like, I help to, I give random career advice to people, but I also exhibit that I don't know a lot of things, and I screw up fairly frequently, at least for people who work with me, even though I don't necessarily show it all the time. But I think you're okay with that as long as you are clear with like what you want to do long term. You're clear with like goal that you want more substance. Like you, if you help people get into tech, that's really good. Is that the only thing that you want to do for the rest of your life? Probably not. And so if that's the case, then you still want to learn, and that's ultimately like the long-term direction that you want to go with as well. Then you need to be vulnerable. You need to show that you're interested in other things, and I don't see a way around that.
So then, in essence, like just kind of commit to having the message muddled, I guess, if that makes sense.
I think it's it's not the thing that you want to hear. You want to, but like it's just the truth, you know. And I think you can make a game out of it, or you can split different mediums. So, for example, Chad, like let's say Twitter is your primary medium for doing one thing, but then YouTube or Instagram or whatever else is your primary medium for doing another thing. That's totally fine, because those are different audiences, and you are able to sort of shard your sort of persona there. I think that's possible. I see people kind of do that more as a sort of personal professional split, rather than topic split of like learn more teaching here and then more learning there. But I think it's possible.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was super helpful.
No.
Sam, you have one follow-up. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, real quick. I was just wondering if your idea of specializing in the new would apply to these last two questions that you've answered, like as far as choosing what topic to, if you have to, if you don't know what to pick for what to learn in public, should that be something you should bias toward as something that's new? Or am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I will say that this is not a hard and fast rule. I think this is an idea that you should consider, because it works so well. So you don't always have to chase after the new hotness, but I think it helps you a lot, because there's just a lot of tailwinds for you that help you along, in a sense that like not that many people know about it yet. You are disproportionately spending your time on this topic, which is really super helpful, and being helpful to people who are more experienced than you, and people who are less experienced than you. And there's not like a mountain of history to climb over to get to competence in this new thing. So I think it can help. It's not the only way for sure, but it is a source of relative advantage. I don't know if I'm being too theoretical here. All right. I'm gonna assume that everyone has is up on questions, but feel free to raise your hand, and I'm just gonna sort of wrap up. Like we typically try to aim these sessions for like half an hour, and then half an hour of Q&A, but it's still pretty early. So, and I want to keep it free flowing. Okay, so a couple more things. Let's just kind of move past this. I assume that you've read all of this. You can read all of this. This is a really important part of the Learn in Public sequence that I want to emphasize to this group, which is that you're just getting started learning public. A lot of it, you think that a lot of it comes from you. You think that like you have to generate all the ideas, when actually you don't, because probably the best way to learn in public is to pick up what others put down. And we say this enough in this community that actually it's also it's an acronym now, PUWTPD, and it's engaging in conversation rather than being in isolation by yourself. Like that's kind of the general idea. Someone out there that you want to be a mentor, puts out something new. Being first responder can get you disproportionate advantages. So this is kind of a parallel of the specialize in the new idea, but it's specialized in the new specifically from someone that you want to learn from. So this idea of picking up what you put down is really central. in various forms. Like if they have stuff that they would like to explore, they just don't have time by definition because they're busy and they're sort of experts in their field. You can get up there by actually picking up on it and following through. It's not going to be easy because by definition it's kind of like on the edge of whatever the field is. But actually, a lot of time they'll sort of mark out what's sort of easy for beginners to get started with, and most people just don't take them up on it because most people are lurking, most people are busy with their lives. But you, as someone who is very keen on both learning the field and establishing a reputation in that field, you can be their collaborator. And if you do it often enough, you can be their friend and peer and coworker as well. So I feel like this is a subheading that is of disproportionate importance in the overall learning public philosophy. Chad, question.
So my question about this is, how do I put this? How do you mix between like what they, picking up what they put down versus what is your own interest? Do you kind of sacrifice what you're interested in and just pick up whatever they put down, or do you focus solely on what you're interested in and then try to find things that others have put down but that is still within your interest?
I think the latter. It should be something that you're inherently interested in doing, and hopefully there's a lot of overlap. Sometimes there's less, which is why like it's not a hard. Again, none of these are hard rules, but this is also not a hard rule in the sense of like, if you can't find anyone that's like doing the same thing that you're interested in, then there's not much of a choice. Like you just kind of have to go it on your own. I'm just saying that you'll have an easier time of it and you have more response. You have more immediate response if you are working in collaboration in this fashion. Another popular framing of this is called the permissionless apprentice. This is Jack Butcher's framing of it. I really like it because it's 2 words. I wish I came up with it. But also it's a little bit of a creepy stalkery mindset. But he has this idea of basically apprenticing yourself to someone without formally asking them to be your mentor, right? So without needing permission. It's the same thing. Like basically, like if you feel like there's someone that you could learn a lot from, like you probably share a lot of interests that they have, and maybe you should be a bit open-minded as to. You don't seem to be so interested in what they're doing, but they're definitely very interested in it, and maybe you're not appreciating why, and maybe investing some time into learning the motivations about this mentor that doesn't seem to overlap the interest that much would reveal something to you that you didn't understand before. So I don't know if I'm coming across in that way, but like basically, like maybe you're wrong. Maybe you actually overlap in interests more than you know. And you just got to dig in a little bit more to figure out why. Chad in the chat says, you think it's related to contributing open source? I think contributing open source helps a lot, but like it is never trivial. Like anything beyond like contributing to docs and like is never trivial. So I think that more people promote contributing to open source than really give a clear idea of how to do it in a way that like isn't spam. And I think a lot of people, especially every October when it comes to Oktoberfest, do a lot of surface level spam because they don't know how to contribute. That is not entirely their fault. A lot of open source projects don't really help you to contribute. They don't document the architecture. They don't document like why certain decisions are made. Therefore, they don't make it easy to contribute. But that is just the normal state of open source. And you kind of have to overcome a lot of barriers to get to a point where you're significantly contributing something to the project rather than just like tweaking docs or something. So I don't know. I think it's useful. But I think there are many other ways to pick up what they put down apart from just contributing to the open source. Chad, you wanted to follow up?
Oh no, I'm fine. But yeah, I really appreciate I really appreciate your advice. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Well, That was quick. Okay, I saw your hand up, so I thought you had a comment there. Okay, so that's about it in terms of like covering this chapter. This is the only time I've ever put down the range of reasons why learning in public works, right? So there's the 1% rule, putting yourself out there as compared to the 90%, 99% of people who don't. There's Cunningham's law, which is once you've gotten something wrong in public, you never forget it. There's positive reinforcement in the sense of building in social feedback so that once you've learned something, you get any minor bit of feedback helps, because like now you're not learning it alone, which is fantastic. Which and sometimes the feedback is not super helpful, and it's fine. Like, you know, you appreciate the spirit of the thing rather than the content of the thing. But like that positive reinforcement really helps you because you're now no longer getting like sort of moral support from like your spouse or whatever who doesn't actually understand what you're doing. You're getting support from someone who actually is in the same field, which is great. Availability bias. This is a marketing concept in the sense of if you're just the person posting about your topic constantly nonstop, you're part of that conversation, people think you're an expert anyway, even though you're not. And that's where part of the fake it till you make it comes in, where like they'll start referring to you for questions and you may not know the answer, but like you go look it up, and like just the process of doing this a lot turns you into an expert. And I don't know, I've seen it enough that like I kind of put it in there as people confuse first to mind with the best. Bloom's taxonomy. This one. So this one is an interaction. So okay, let's actually click into this. This is me forcing this. This is more. So Bloom's taxonomy is a structural learning. Like it's very common like pedagogical concept that most teachers will understand. But learn in public forces you to go up Bloom's taxonomy, right? Instead of just recalling basic facts and concepts, like you're now being forced to explain it, you're now being forced to apply it, you're forced to analyze and compare and contrast between them, and then the highest tier of it is to create new or original work. And you can see how like anytime you come across an idea or something that you learned or something that you're obsessed by, you can start with this, and then you can go up in this taxonomy. But every single time you're going up, you're deepening your relationship with the concept and your understanding of it. And again, like there's so much that people don't do here because it takes so much effort. But once you get to this point, like you are in that sort of rarefied air of the small percentage of people who've actually pushed themselves to this extent. But I think once you see this taxonomy, you get a roadmap of like, here are possible things that you could do, you know? And I think that's valuable in and of itself. All right, Chad, you had a question about, can you possibly put up other examples of pick up what they put on the community site? Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, sorry, that was the question that I had my hand up for earlier. So no, I have no more questions.
There's a lot of examples here. I'm just lazy to copy and paste it over, but we have, you know, in the Discord. Yeah, Discord is.
I'll note that search. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice keyword if we spell it right. Sometimes we don't spell it exactly right. I don't know. There's 103 examples here. So really, really good. Honestly, like I think it's more important to understand the principles rather than the examples. But hey, the examples help. Okay. A couple more, which is inbound marketing. So I really like this concept because it actually comes from the marketing world. And this is a little bit about personal marketing as well. So this is something that I never really talked about in parts of this sort of job search idea. You know, when we talked about like how learning in public applies to careers, we talked a little bit about not starting from zero, which is really great. But even when the job opportunity comes to you, it's already been filtered for you, right? Like you're most of the time when you're looking for a job, you say you need a job, you go look at the available positions out there, and you're thinking about whether or not you can mold yourself or fit yourself to their needs. Whereas and that's sort of what we call outbound marketing or outbound opportunities. Inbound opportunities are people evaluating that their opportunity fits you, because of the demonstrated interest that you already have shown, right? And so I really like this idea of inbound marketing, because I think ultimately that leads to greater job satisfaction, because it is shaped for you, right? Like rather than sort of you going out there. So I feel like I'm beating it over the head with this, but I really like that concept, and I think this is a key part of why it works for jobs. And yeah, all right. And then finally, productizing yourself. I really like this idea, and this is a Naval Ravikant quote. Highly recommend you familiarize yourself with this concept if you haven't heard about it already. But essentially, making friends while you sleep. Like most of the time, we are networking by making face-to-face connections, but there's so much time there's not face-to-face that you could occupy by putting your content out there and making it discoverable, disconnected from your specific waking hours. So I really like this concept, and Learning Public helps with that, because you're creating assets that live on without you being physically present. Okay. The final bit I always like to end with is that I did not come up with this with Learning Public. The earliest example I can find is NASA talking about Learning in Public in 2009, I think, 2010. But they definitely had it, before that. And NASA learns in public. This is how they describe how they learn in public internally within NASA. So I just really like that. You're doing the same thing that rocket scientists are doing. They're not too good for it. Neither are you. Go forth and do the same thing. So yeah, it's a big idea. Obviously, it's what probably a lot of you came across when you came across this book. But I hope that you get some encouragement. I hope that in this community you get support for your exercise doing it. Yeah, I mean it's a lifelong practice. Like there's no goal. I never said like, oh, Learning Public to like get to senior or Learning Public to get a new job or anything. I think it's just like a good idea to do for like the rest of your career and hopefully life. And that's what I'm doing. And I think it's really super helpful. So yeah, appreciate you coming and learning about it with me. And yeah, I mean, feel free to write your own recaps of this and Learning Public about Learning in Public. I think that's the ultimate meta. All right. Any other questions before we sign off? I think this is an opportunity for questions. Always love putting up the soundbar. Okay, so next week we're going to cover cloning open source apps. We may need to cover two, because this is a very short chapter. So let's just do this. Let's cover clone open source apps and know your tools. These are just kind of like the two follow-up essays that I wrote after Learning Public. And these are starting to get a little bit more specific. But as you can tell, like this is a very free-form conversation. So I'm happy to jump back and forth with the other chapters as well. But mostly, like I want to provide a space for you to absorb more from me, from others in the chat. And yeah, we'll just deepen our relationship with the community, the content, all that good stuff. All right, final question from Chad. No pressure.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, is there anything different about learning a fundamental skill in public? Like, I'd mentioned I was learning back-end engineering the last time. Like, it's not necessarily like, obviously, like a lot of people have done a lot of work, past that, but like, like a lot of the kind of things you're talking about was kind of like, not nuance, but novel ideas. Like, would I engage with this process differently doing a not so novel idea?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Even covering basics is still valuable. You may get a different kind of audience from that, but it doesn't matter. It's like it's just where you are at today, right now. So I'd much rather it be driven by your interests rather than you picking what to do based on what you think the response will be. So like be more self-focused rather than others focused, because ultimately like that will come and go, but like you're the only one that are really, you're really going to experience your entire journey from beginning to end. So I much rather be you focus on your interests. It just helps if obviously if it syncs with others. So that's where the pick up what they put down comes in.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, cool. That's I think that's it for this week. This was a really nice discussion. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed it. I know not everybody got to speak or anything, but you're welcome to follow up in Discord. But otherwise, I'll see you next week, and we'll talk about the 2 chapters: clone open source apps and know your tools. That's it. Bye, everyone. I'm gonna give some nice
Have a good one.
applause, and also. I don't know if is the audio coming across? It is, right? Yeah, it is. I'm sharing sound, and then we'll do this. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.